Hey everybody, it's Master Gallengeist here, bringing you my review for the book Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson. And I enjoyed this. It's the third novel in the Stormlight Archive thing that's going on, and I had read the other two, and I thought I would read through this hefty fucker right here, and decided to do a review on it. Now, I'm weird, alright? My preference is usually for mass market paperbacks, so that usually means that I'm like fuck balls behind on a lot of shit, usually by about a year to maybe 2 years. That happened to me with Game of Thrones, and whatever. I could have still waited like a fucking decade, and I still wouldn't have fucking had any spoilers to fucking screw with on that one. But, I don't mind longer books. Now, granted, one of the issues I would have with this in paperback, or mass market paperback, is how to kind of like hold the damn thing as I'm reading it. So, you get into certain kind of things. Since I usually prefer mass market paperbacks, it's usually my kind of thing. And I don't mind longer books. It's just, this one really, more so than kind of like the other two, showed how a lot of characters and a lot of things going on kind of tends to mess with the pacing with what's going on. Like, we start off, we had seen that they had gotten to the mythical city for the Knights Radiant, Irathuru, tower kind of thing. And then we're in there for a good chunk. They're pretty much getting acclimated there, trying to figure out what's going on. We see that Kaladin is doing stuff with his Windrunners, which, since they're like part of his stuff, then they're kind of like squires for him. They're able to like do stuff as long as he's within range and everything. Whereas they would have to like bond with a Spren afterwards to kind of like get to their own kind of night level, and they're able to do that kind of stuff. However, we see all different kind of night radiants kind of brought in after this kind of a fact, as they're kind of like mucking about, because they learned that there's portals, these oath gates, to various different kind of places around Roshar. We see Dalinar is trying to do as the Spren honor dictated of uniting them. However, it isn't until we get to like the end that we learn, oh, that's what he meant by unite. Granted, uniting the people to kind of like fight against a kind of crazed ass motherfucking deity called Odium, going like, I'm gonna drag everything to shit. Should be kind of reason enough, like, hey, fuck boy, I'm gonna do an apocalypse on your ass. It's like, I still want shit, bitch. It's like, well, that certainly wouldn't happen in any kind of scenario, would it? Spoiler alert, it would. So yes, it's very, very realistic. Though still not the least bit frustrating, as you see Dalinar trying to, like, muck with these motherfuckers and deal with this stuff. We also get Adeline. Adeline? I don't know how to pronounce shit. So if you got a better kind of pronunciation, or to, like, help me, Adeline? Adeline? Renarin? Navani? Yasna? Shalon, Teft, Rock. Okay, no, I'm just running through, because those are some important characters that go along, and there's fuckballs other ones. Zizeth. Nan. And others. Like, and then there's too much shit that goes on in this book, and also too much shit that is, like, repeats, and just, like, I understand that we get through a certain kind of bit, but it just, repetition happens a lot throughout this. Not as much in the first bit, as it gets really repetitive towards the end for certain points that it's trying to drive home. Because you get the kind of stuff of, like, Kaladin feeling that he's not worthy, feeling that he's a failure on certain kind of things. Same with Shalon. But it's Dalinar that it really gets fucking bad. Like, the whole kind of thing that it took too long to get to the reveal of, like, hey, why did he have memories of his wife erased? because he accidentally killed her. Not accidentally. He set fire to a place but didn't know that she was in there, so it's accidental that he was trying to kill her, but he wasn't completely an accident, as we see, and he was also being driven by kind of like spren rage shit for the thrill, because it's like an unmade thing. It's like, oh, alright, okay. Now that's mainly through the back half. Let's get through most of this of what kind of goes on. So they're fucking around here through. Adeline pretty much killed Sadeas, and that had this other spren thing being like going around doing copycat murders. And that would have been an interesting kind of bit of like, ooh, let's see this kind of little detective story. However, it wasn't the most kind of important thing. It's like, there's a lot of stuff in this book where it's like, hey, that would have been kind of cool, but I don't see how this really kind of connects to the main stuff on the plot going on, but whatever. So that's connected to this other unmade that's for some reason goop-a-dooped in the fucking bowels of Urithiru, and Shalon's able to kind of like touch it, and it's this thing that tries to like make things like humans and shit. And it just goes around and copies shit and everything. And she like touched it, and because she's a light weaver, it scared it shitless, and it kind of like ran off. Then we learned that you can pretty much capture spren, so that's going to be kind of like a kind of important Pokemon kind of thing that's going on, I think, because it's like, how do we stop the unmade from doing this stuff? We take a big fucking rock and we put it in it. It sounds stupid, but it can work if it's done correctly. Because, again, I'm kind of going forward a little bit, but that's at the end. So, we then also get another little kind of like side quest thing, as that Kaladin pretty much goes off to try and see what's going on with the Alethkar kind of countryside. He finds out that his parents are alive. Yay! And then he comes down and he sees that like the Parshmen are like, hey, we're fucking, we can think again. So, fuck you people. And we learn kind of stuff that, like, their enslavement wasn't... It's not cool. It's shit. It's fucking bad. But then we start learning other stuff that is, like, wholly like, even kind of worse. But we see that we're getting this other kind of side to it as well. Even though we see that the Voidbringers... I don't even know if that's actually the correct term for them when we get to the end of this book. But up until this point, the Voidbringers, i.e. these fused people... well, not just the fused people, but awakened Parshmen are like going around and pretty much doing the same kind of shit that humans would be doing to them. Pretty much taking them out of the houses. It's like, I like that it's doing this whole kind of thing of like, alright, we learned that the Parshmen were actually the true inhabitants of Roshar, and that the true Voidbringers were the humans, and that they brought their gods with them, i.e. Odium and what's going on with there. And I'm like, but then how did they like bond regular spren here? It's really kind of weird, and we need some other kind of explanations, but yet we've got fucking a lot of other characters and some things to see other stuff throughout characters that really doesn't connect to it, and it's just like, what the fuck? I'm not... Usually when I get engrossed into a book and everything like that, into characters, I'm pretty well and able to kind of follow and everything going on like this, but there's too many characters and too many weird things going on throughout this whole book to really keep good track of, because there's some that's like, oh, that's kind of cool to learn that, but that's not important to the kind of plot that's like kind of going on, so it like poops out, and you're like, what the fuck? And then sometimes you do one character and then another character, and then you're like trying to figure out what's kind of going on, because sometimes you have to go back a little bit further to figure that out. It's like, what the fuck? So he learns that and then gets away from him as they like go to pretty much like learn these fused people. And we learn that the Parshendi kind of thing, that these fused are like ancient Parshendi that are taking over other people's bodies. And like, that ain't fucking good. So you got like this immortal pissed off motherfucker? What the shit? That doesn't sound like a good way to kind of like fucking do stuff again. And then you look into like the heralds and their immortal pissed off motherfuckers, and I'm like, well, this just sounds like fucking insanity. like I hope they get to a point where everybody sits down and be like, all these motherfuckers suck. Let's join forces, fuck off with this shit. Now granted, it's going to be hard to do that because the Parshmen are being like, you fucking enslaved us and everything, but we don't know the complete method of what happened to going into taking the ability to use their intelligence and their cognitive abilities from them. If that was a Parchment betrayal, if that was humans doing it, if it was fucking Wit. No, Wit didn't seem to do it, but he's a character from evidently the Cosmere, and it was really kind of weird to see him kind of like doing shit at the end, so I don't know if I need to read that shit to learn more about him, or if I'll get what I get in the Stormlight archives. But it's like, alright, cool. And I understand that you gotta do a lot of setup and everything like that, but this just like goes really long. I get Zack Snyder kind of feeling and vibes because I went through this once with the Zack Snyder cut for the Justice League, and that movie didn't need to be 4 hours. Granted, it kind of, I don't see a way kind of around that because of the amount of shit that they had to fucking do to kind of fucking do it. However, there's certain things in here where it's just like, oh, there's that little dude or whatnot. If that's not important, why the fuck is this in here? And if it is important, and I'm like in another book, and I'm like, what the fuck? Like, I can keep shit in my head, but like doing enough of it is like, you kind of need to pare down certain things. So they get her through kind of like situated. Elhokar's like, hey, I kind of want to see what's going on with my wife. And Dalinar's trying to pretty much like get all these people together. The Thalans, Jakavid, Azesh, Azir? Fuck my ass. The Azesh Emperor? Yeah. But everybody's like, hey, the Alethi are kind of like this warrior kind of thing. They're just going to betray us and try and conquer shit. And they all kind of just like bicker and everything like that. And you just always see Dalinar and Navani trying to do all this kind of stuff. He also gets excommunicated and he starts remembering all this kind of stuff. And oh my god. Like, I understand dealing with mental health issues and everything like that. From like Kaladin and Shalon. Granted, they get kind of repetitious with certain things, but usually it's brought into kind of newer kind of context. The reveal just took way too fucking long, and I'm like, I know this. Can we get through with it? And then he just keeps going through all this kind of stuff until we get to the end, where he's like, I accept that I did these things, and it's bad, and it's wrong, but I want to be a better man, as he then refutes Odium. Because we see Odium's like, hey, let's gotta do this shit. And evidently, he's like one of those big spren, like the Stormfather and Cultivation, because the Stormfather's kind of like a splintered fragment of honor. And they usually are like 3 bondsmiths. I'm like, who the fuck is the bondsmith to this dude? But we get towards it, and we get all this stuff kind of like spinning out. We get Kaladin going with Elhokar and Adeline and Shalon and like her groupies and his groupies, squires, as they go to Kholinar, and they kind of like fuck around for a little bit before figuring out that there's like some spren on Odium's side that are like fucking around in the place, and that Elhokar's wife is like nutty ass shit and like has a gemstone in her and is like possessed by one of the unmade spren, and that his kid's like, I don't know what the fuck's going on no more, and he's like 2, and then Elhokar gets like killed by this Moash dude, and I'm like, what the fuck? This is important to show just like that the dude just continually craved vengeance against Elhokar, even though Elhokar did do him wrong. There are shitty ways to go about trying to rectify that shit. But it's thing of like Kaladin failed to like, he killed Elhokar, and then also the Parshendi that were working with Parshendi or Parshmen that were with him were also getting killed, and he's trying to stop all these people from being fucking dumbasses and killing each other and killing themselves. And he's like, I want to help you both, and he's just like fucked up. And then we see Shalon trying to like figure out what's going on. She had her fuck up moment as she's trying to like help all these people, and seeing him getting killed by this group, and it was this kid, and he's like, she just lost it. Wit kind of helped her, and it was nice. She's trying to make all these different kind of personas that are stronger than herself, and Wit had some nice words to say about like how it wasn't right what happened to you, but you're stronger than this. And it was like, nice. As she then kind of like goes through the whole kind of infiltration of the palace, and then fucks around and takes this one kind of like Spren out, tries to utilize the Oath Gate, but the one Spren's like, I'm with Odium, but I'm not going to let you do this, but I'm going to put you in Shadesmar or whatnot. And then they have a fucking adventure in there as they got to fucking tool around to try and get out. And it's just like spinning wheels as we learn that like Syl, Kaladin's Spren, is like an honor Spren, and she was almost going to be taken by these other people, these other honor Spren, to their honor city in Shadesmar. And yeah. They fuck around for a little bit as Dalinar's pretty much dealing with the whole reveal of all that kind of shit. Those are the kind of important bits. Then he's trying to figure out what's going on with Thaylen City, and he's getting everything together. But of course the bomb drops, and him being like High King and everything, all this shit pops out at once. And I'm like, yeah, Taravangian, you kind of really overplayed your hand. Don't fucking... Whenever you're trying to, like, get some kind of thing, I understand wanting to utilize every gun to bear to kind of, like, take something out, but it was, like, way too much and kind of pretty much tipped him off, as he then also says, I was going to try and kill you or something like that, but that's not going to work out now, because he's dealing with all that kind of stuff, and then Odium pretty much makes his play and has all these Parshendi, pretty much utilizes the Thrill Spren to turn Sadeas's forces under the command of Amaram against everybody. Who's like, yeah, I'm gonna do this. As they also bring up like these giant motherfucking golem ass shit things called Thunderclasts. Yeah. And they're kind of banging around. Dalinar goes out and be like, hey, let's do this champion to champion. And Odium's trying to get him to do stuff, but through everything that he's been through, he's like, no, I'm not gonna do it. And then he, instead of uniting the people, he unites the realms of like physical, cognitive, and spiritual. That allows Kaladin, Shalon, and Adeline to get out. Adeline was like severely wounded, but his brother heals him. We start seeing that like Spren don't stick to one complete side, as we see that Renarin, Adeline's brother, is a Knight Radiant, but his Spren is corrupted by Odium, but he's still a good guy and he's helping out. We see that there is a Parshendi woman, Benley, that has a good Spren and is actually a Knight Radiant, speaking ideals. We see Zeth pop up, learning to be like a Skybreaker with this fucking sentient sword that's like, I want to eat evil people, or like kill evil people. And he's getting up to his ideals and trying to become more and more. We see that Harold's kind of fucking around, and we see Moash is utilized at one point towards the end to kill one of them, even though that's a hard fucking task to do. And it's like, alright. And we see that instead of like certain orders are done by new Radiants, but two of them are represented by like two of the Heralds, and they pop up. So we get it kind of working out. One of the big kind of criticisms that I have for the last kind of action scene is that it's one big chapter, and we jump back and forth between all these different kind of places, and it just didn't work for me. And the execution for it, like, I don't have a problem with what they were. I just kind of wanted like certain chapters for each kind of one as they then intersect with certain ones. It just didn't work out for me and wasn't as engaging. Not that I had a problem with the complete content of it, but how it was kind of worked out and how it kind of flowed, if that makes sense. I love those kind of scenes to be like drawn in and engrossed in those kind of like climactic action scenes as everything's going on. As we see Dalinar take a giant ruby and poke him on a motherfucker. As we see Kaladin beat the shit out of Amaram and some fused. Shalon doing her kind of stuff. Yasna being a complete badass. Renarin taking down a motherfucker. Adeline trying to figure out what the fuck to do. And then we see that there was also the Parshendi attacking her through Teft became one of the next Knight Radiants as they kind of like pop out. He swears his oaths, even though his weaknesses have led him to sell his uniform, as he's addicted to this like fire moss kind of shit, and that got Rock severely fucked up, but he got healed, and they kind of come in and help out and everything like that. It's like, alright, cool. And we then see that Shalon and Adeline get married, but we don't see the wedding for some fucked up reason, even though I would have loved to have seen what a Alethi wedding would have went like, but no. Then we see that Dalinar got into his room and starts writing his own stuff because he had Navani teach him how to read and write. He's starting to do his own kind of stuff, like the Way of Kings shit. So, yeah, that doesn't seem like it should have been like 1,300 pages. Like, it just seemed entirely too long for what was going on, and that the repetition didn't need to be as bad as it was, because Kaladin and Shalon were doing their own kind of thing of like, alright, you're beating that dead horse, I get it. Dalinar's was just like, you beat it, shoot it, stab it a little bit, nuke the motherfucker, have Kaladin and Shalon kind of like beat its ass with their own kind of dead horse just for good measure before you keep like whacking at it. It's like, I get it, and I understand you want to take it seriously, but it inches so slowly forward of like, okay, you're doing stuff that I've already kind of like seen or understood. It's just at a different kind of time point. You know what I mean? Like, I get it, and I can get that it's kind of symbolizing and showing that like the kind of rut that Dalinar was in with all that kind of stuff with the death of Evie and how that kind of affected him. But it was just numbing to me at some points of like, can the story continue? Like, I understand his character and his story is a part of the big story, but it was just like, why? And granted, the thing at the end was worth it, but it's like, and I understand the whole thing is like journey before destination. I completely get that. I'm not saying to completely just like, take me to the end. No, like, there are ways to make sure that the journey isn't like, I've seen that rock, I've seen that tree, I'm going in a circle, wee, yeah, fuck me 2 and fuck me 3, ah, shit, that fucking rock is back, eat me, motherfucker, and then I'm just singing to myself to amuse myself, you know what I mean? Like, there's just so many times that I could see that same rock and be like, I get it, can we continue? Oh yeah, here's a side character, what does this have to do with it? Nope, go back to the same rock. God! Fuck you. Continue. And it's not like I think it's completely and utterly horrible. It's just, I've seen other stories that have engrossed me, like the Expansive stories. Like, those ones I'd be like, ooh, character chapter. Yeah. And I'm like, ooh, yeah. And then, like, at least within the first book of the Expanse series, I was like, alright, let's do this. Like, I was engrossed in those character chapters and like seeing what was going on and getting in their heads and everything like that. I'm just like, yeah, motherfucker. Here, I didn't feel like I got that enough time and time enough to kind of do that. Or if I did, I then went to another character, fucked around with that for a little bit, then went around to something else. Because there's so much and so expansive of what's going on with this. Now, I definitely am interested in seeing kind of like where this goes or whatnot, but there might be a certain point where I'm just like, eh. And that's kind of what I've learned to kind of do with certain things. Like, certain books or series just will not grab me. Or, like, I read one book and I'm like, yeah, I'm good. Now, granted, this is not that bad. I mean, this, to that level. I mean, I'm in the 3rd book already, and those are beefy, hefty motherfuckers. But if I ever get to a point and I'm just like, you know what, this isn't for me, and that really sucks because I do like these characters and want to see kind of what goes on and how they kind of do what they do. But this was a hard one to get there. It's like I kind of had to really push myself with it because I enjoy this stuff. I love sci-fi, I love fantasy, and I love kind of seeing characters deal with certain problems and everything and how they will go through and overcome them. It's just, this was just like, well, I'm stuck in a bog. And then I just kind of like, a little bit. And now I'm back to the same place. Alright. So, if you're into Brandon Sanderson, definitely check it out. If you're not into long books, don't. Let's see. But yeah, I like the characters and I like to see kind of what's going on for them. It's just taking a while and I don't mind that. I like that journey, but if I'm being like, why is this so slow? And just thinking, where am I and what's going on? That kind of like draws me out a little bit. So we'll kind of have to see. If you're alright with that kind of slower pace, this could probably work out for you. So those are my opinions on the book. Tell me what you guys think in the comments below. If you liked it, if you didn't like it, if you agree with me, if you disagree with me. Also, like and subscribe, and I hope you have a good day.